Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's legends and leaders, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. January Digital is a marketing leadership company solving business challenges through consulting, media excellence, and actionable analytics for some of the most innovative, growth-oriented brands in the country, including Carhartt, Kendra Scott, Strivectin, and Steve Madden. Made up of January Consulting and January Digital, they offer strategic leadership services and full-funnel media planning, execution, and optimization, leveraging data to provide insights, yielding client success. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. On today's flight of the Retail Pilot, I am happy to have Hali Borenstein, the CEO of sustainable fashion brand Reformation. Hali has been with Reformation since 2014, when she joined the company as director of merchandising and most recently served as president of the company prior to becoming CEO. Under Hali's leadership, Reformation has grown to 1,000 team members, over 40 retail locations, and its international business has more than tripled. She has also overseen significant category expansion and product innovation during her tenure, establishing Reformation as a day-to-day wardrobe staple. Hali has accelerated the brand's progress towards its lofty sustainability commitments, including climate positive by 2025 and the new commitment to be fully circular by 2030. A native of Miami, Florida, Hali received her BA from Duke and her MBA from Stanford. In addition to her role at Reformation, she serves on the board of directors for Carter's Inc. Hali currently lives in Los Angeles with her husband and their 2 daughters. Hali, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was fortunate enough to trip Hali at, I think, Shop Talk as you were walking away from the conference. And I said, I've got to get her for the podcast. And you were nice enough to stop. I mean, I don't know if I really tripped you, but I probably came very close. And maybe because you were in a rush, you agreed to do the podcast, but here we are. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Happy. Thank you for stopping me.
Curious to hear your path to retail, what you did before Reformation. Fill us in on how you got there.
So I grew up in Miami, and my apparel was always a portion of my family's background. My grandparents who were in the children's pajama manufacturing business. And so clothing was always something that was very close to my heart. I remember I always would walk the malls. Aventura Mall, which we all know very fondly, was my mall. And it was always very interesting to me how apparel was a way to define yourself and kind of tell the world how you're feeling and who you are and want to be. And so that stuck with me. I left Miami, went to school, did a liberal arts education, which amazing education, but didn't really qualify me to do anything in particular. So I went to consulting for several years, which I thought was an incredible crash course on how do you think about business? How do you solve hard problems? And I was exposed to a lot of different consumer-facing businesses as a result of that experience. Coming out of that, I went to business school to continue to kind of refine that toolkit, and then had my first real retail job out of business school in children's apparel. That was an incredible crash course on merchandising. So it was a merchandising role with a lot of team members who like you, Ken, had worked at the Gap and really knew that classic approach. And so I learned from them. And then ultimately, Reformation quickly became a part of my life when the founder found me on LinkedIn and we started talking. And so I jumped ship to join what was a very small company at the time.
So I've got to ask, when you were at Gymboree, was that with Mark Breitbart or Dan Griesmer?
No, Mark was the CEO at the time. And
okay.
Mark took a risk on me. I remember interviewing and, I didn't know anything about merchandising or apparel, but, he was really willing to give me that shot. So I have a lot of gratitude towards Mark for that.
Well, he's boomeranged and he's back in charge at the Gap. So good for
Yeah,
him and good for him for hiring you. It's funny. I spent part of my career at the Aventura Mall. When I was at Macy's, I was the group manager of men's in Aventura. So I
I
know
love
the
that.
area well.
It's
And
a
all
great
I
mall.
remember was, it was just everything that was bling associated, we sold. Shiny, shine, and bling, and it blew out. That's about all I remember from my Aventura days. That was a while ago, but it was a fun time down there. So you got to Reformation in 2014 and you started in a merchandising role and you've been with the company now 10 years. You've gone through how many different jobs to become the CEO?
It all feels like one big job with new chapters in it. So I was fortunate that every couple of years, some new challenge, new opportunity would present itself. And I was allowed to take a shot at it. And so a lot of things that I probably was good at doing, and a lot of things where I had no business doing it and had to learn it along the way. But there were probably multiple iterations every kind of year to 2 years of different parts of the business that would kind of come into my scope and I'd learn about and manage.
It's interesting. You said the founder found you on LinkedIn. What attracted you to the company?
So I remember flying down for an interview and there was this energy, this sense of we can do anything. We can push boundaries. And so I think it was really this concept of innovation and trying something new, bravery, so to speak, that you don't really hear all the time in retail, that kind of very much excited me. At that point, when I first flew down, it was an old sewing machine factory. It was the building, it was a beautiful building in Boyle Heights. And there was a small factory downstairs, a small team upstairs, and everyone was kind of working together and just trying things. And I think that was really fun and exciting for me in terms of being able to build and create. The other piece that for me personally really resonated was just a sense of how you value labor and sustainability. It was that real people focus in terms of the manufacturing and the supply chain that felt really special and important to me. And so that was another reason that I got excited about the opportunity.
It was still in 2014 very much in its early phase, very much considered a startup. How would you say, or what would you tell someone who's moving into the workplace, startup versus a more established company like a Jim Barry? Because couldn't be more different. You probably had to do a number of different jobs, even though you had a specific title when you joined Reformation. But I'm sure you were responsible for everything and anything that needed to be done versus a better defined lane at Jim Barry. So how did you decide to go from one to the other, or what led to that decision?
So I think for me, it was the ability to kind of touch a lot of things and learn very quickly. So the pace of opportunity would obviously present itself to be a lot quicker in a startup, right? Like at Reformation, if there's a problem, go do it, go fix it, right? Like there's no one stopping you. Obviously, that's a bit more challenging at a more defined company where you do have a lot of structure and process already in place. But I will say, during my time at Reformation, I did feel like I had a lot of opportunities to step outside my lane and try new things. And I think most great leaders across businesses, regardless of size, find ways to let talent thrive and push boundaries, regardless of the structure. And so, for wherever you are, if you're coming out of school, I think the important thing is, if you have an idea, it doesn't matter where you are, say it, do something about it, and just put the work in. Because I do think sometimes we always think it's about the setting, but for me, I think it's also about the individual and their willingness to raise their hand and try something new.
In 2019, the company was not sold, but there was a major investor that came in, Permira, who I believe is out of Spain,
London.
out of London. What was the big change that you experienced from that event, if there was one?
So Permira did a majority investment back in 2019. They're still our partners today. And so when we partnered with them, to that point, we had only raised about 37 million in venture capital, which is pretty conservative. considering the landscape that we were operating in at the time. And so from a practical perspective, that really means we were very disciplined to that point in terms of driving very steady growth and profitability year over year from our peers. And so the business at that point had grown significantly since when I started in 2014. I think we were about 150 million in sales at that time. And we were actually really focused on dresses. We were predominantly in the occasion and dress business. And so when we went to bring on a partner, we were looking for someone or a firm who could really help us achieve operational scale. A partner that could help expand the value proposition we had built while really preserving what was special about it. Our product strategy, our mission to bring sustainable fashion to everyone, and our brand. And so Premier really did offer that. The fact that they had such a background in Europe really did enable us and give us a lot of structure and kind of a head start in our international expansion, which we were just starting. I think at that time we were just opening our first international store. And so they've had a track record in retail. They had a lot of operational excellence and they had international experience. And then most importantly, they also really believed in our values. Sustainability has been a core principle and a driver of investment for them for a while now. And so it was very clear when we met them that there was a lot of alignment between us and how they could help us then get to the next level.
When they came on board in 2019, did they have a mandate or a point of view that they were really pushing in terms of where they believe the growth should come from?
I wouldn't say there was a mandate. I think they really did buy into the plan that we were already marching to, where they really invested a lot of their resource and focus was in helping us on that operational platform. So to that date, we were operating on an e-commerce site that was not as scalable. We didn't have an ERP, didn't have any distribution center technology really. So that's really where they came in saying, look, you guys know brand and product and sustainability incredibly well. We think to get to the next level to $1 billion plus, which we believe you're capable of, we need to invest some more structure into these foundational systems. And so they really did give us the time and capital to do that. And so today, if you look at the business, it's incredibly different in terms of that level of sophistication. And it makes growth a lot easier than kind of what we were doing before, which was quite difficult at times.
Well, you've opened now 40 stores or just over 40 stores. Out of curiosity, which platform did they move you to from the platform that you were on that wasn't working so well and only servicing e-commerce?
So we were on a more local e-commerce platform. It has actually ceased to exist since. We did move to Salesforce about 2.5 years ago. And Salesforce is the technology behind all of our DTC business, so retail and e-commerce.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how many companies, and I think that you mentioned earlier, you're now well over 300 million in sales.
We did over 350 million in 2023.
That's impressive. That's a big number. As you think about growing the company and scaling the business, if you look at the overall pie where you have wholesale as an opportunity, e-commerce, your own stores, and international, I'll put that in bucket number 4. How do you see growing the business over the next 2 years?
So I'd say my first 5 years in Reformation, we were really focused on product and brand and sustainability. We wanted to get all of that right. The next 5 years has been really about kind of foundation and systems and making sure we can scale. And so today we're at a point where we are very focused on continuing to accelerate our expansion. You mentioned a lot of the key levers that we are already working on. The 4 ways we really think about our growth are first, just brand awareness. So the brand has pretty low awareness given our size. And so there's a real opportunity for us to bring our product to more people. And that's through just kind of some of the great marketing we talked about earlier. The second big piece is just distribution. So we have 47 retail stores today. We're opening 10 to 12 stores a year, and wholesale is very limited. So real opportunity just in terms of distribution.
Is it just, let me ask you, Ali, is
Yeah.
wholesale with a limited number of partners, or is it more spread out among mom and pop stores? Where would I find your product outside of a Reformation store?
Yeah, we have very limited partners. It's really partners who kind of want to work with our model because our model is a bit different than a typical wholesale brand. So in the US, Nordstrom is our largest partner, for example. And so there's a couple core accounts that we work with in the US and internationally that make up the bulk of that business. But overall, wholesale is only about 7% of our sales. We're 93% direct to consumer. And so that is a core kind of tenet of our business.
And as you look out over the horizon, would you say it'll maintain that 90% D2C between stores and your own e-commerce with maybe 10%-ish being wholesale?
Somewhere around there, yeah. The ebbs and flows up and down a couple points, but that's what we do think is a sweet spot. It's a really great way to meet new customers, but our business model is really designed around direct to consumer, and so that is our focus.
Let's talk a little bit about the stores, and then we'll get into sustainability, because I know it's critically important and very much part and parcel of the brand. But the store experience is quite unique. And as much as you've been known to really determine the right trends, as you mentioned earlier, specifically with dresses, but now denim is trending for you as well as our other classifications in women's, your store experience is super unique and often sought out and reviewed by many in retail to understand how technology influences the customer experience. Share with us what you're doing in the store and how it's working.
All right. So when I actually started at Reformation, we had three boutiques, very conventional boutiques, and they were great. They were highly profitable, but they were actually a really tough customer experience because all that our associates had time to do was to find you a size, they were putting things away, or they were checking you out. They never really engaged with the customer because they were just too busy. So in 2017, we introduced a new technology that we built ourselves. It's called Retail X. And basically, what it looks like is if you walk into one of our stores, you have two ways of shopping. You can either go to the touch screen on the wall, which has the entire catalog of product available, or you can work with one of our associates who has a touch screen in their hand. And you can walk around, there's a sample of every product on the floor. And you can say, hey, I want to try this on in a small, this on a medium. What goes with this? And you build your cart. So just think like an e-commerce site. You go on, you pick all the things and you put it in your cart. We're doing the same thing in our stores. We're just putting it in your dressing room. When you're ready, you click either on the screen or with your associate, please fulfill my dressing room. And then our back of house is actually operating like a mini distribution center. And so they're fulfilling your dressing room with that product. When you get to the dressing room, it's a more magical experience, we'd like to say. There's different lighting settings. You have a screen in there where you can see the styling advice. You can ask for a different size using the screen. You can ask for help. And we even have an iPhone charger in there. And so really what the experience is just a lot more connected than a typical kind of you go into the dressing room and get a knock here or there. I'm asking if you need another size. What we find from a data standpoint, so we know 62% of customers who walk into a dressing room buy something. And so what's amazing about that number is one, that's a really high number, so that's exciting. But two, the fact that we know that number, right? Most retail, you kind of know how many people walk into your store, you know how many convert, but you don't really understand the journey that customers take along the way. And so Retail X really has allowed us to have a lot more visibility into that journey.
Are your associates encouraging customers to use the screen or work with them? A little bit of both. How do you communicate to the new customers you mentioned earlier? Reformation is, the business is bigger than the brand, I would say. That 350 million is not a small number. And yet the brand is not as well known as maybe it should be. So you're getting new customers often. How does the customer know what to do when they walk into the store?
Everything comes down to the team. And I think this was an early learning with retail. Retail technology is amazing, but it only should support your retail experience. It cannot be the entire retail experience. And so our team is incredible. I am, so fortunate that we've been able to attract and retain such an incredible retail team who really do bring the brand to life. So what we find actually, what's most effective are when associates work with the technology and the customer. That's when you see the customer finds more of what they're looking for, they have the best experience, and they come back. The ideal situation is the associate greets them, shares the experience, and either walks them to a screen and kind of shops it with them, or kind of does it while walking the floor. And that's actually kind of that secret sauce.
Well, it is amazing on two fronts. One, that you do know your fitting room conversion, but I think even more exciting than that, or something that's maybe more unique, is how long you stayed with the technology and got it right. Because so many retailers I see will implement certain tech practices around the store or try something new, and they just don't stay with it long enough, or they don't train the team well enough to use it, because technology is only as good as those who are using it. So clearly you've communicated to your team in the field, in the stores, how to use the technology and get the most out of it. Because you're absolutely right. Once you get the customer in the fitting room, the odds of conversion should at least double, if not triple. I don't know what the conversion is for stores, but a number that I like to use is close to 20%, which is pretty good four-wall conversion. So if you're doing 20% conversion and 60% of that conversion comes out of the fitting room, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there in technology we've all seen. It's just about how you make sure the customer's front and center in using it.
Are you using RFID in the stores?
Not today. We've talked about it at some point, but because everything is already in the system, our inventory accuracy is actually incredibly high. But it would be a really nice way to automate some of the work the team has to do. So it's definitely on the roadmap.
Yeah, I would bet without having all the sizes committed to the floor, your inventory accuracy, as you said, is much more accurate. Are you offering buy online, pick up in store as well?
Yes. That and ship from store are two really great ways to just better service the customer.
Any new technology that we should look for, whether in stores or online, or things that you're excited about in the tech space, AI being all that we discuss these days?
Yeah. I'd say, look, we're a brand that loves to build things ourselves. So I'm most excited about the iterations of Retail X that are coming. We have something coming called mobile dressing room, where you're going to be able to shop from your phone in our stores versus a touch screen, which will really make it a lot easier. One thing, we do get complaints sometimes about our lines because our stores can be really busy and heavily trafficked. And so this is a really great way to kind of help customers move through the stores, get what they're looking for, but still have a really fun and engaging experience. So stay tuned, it's on its way.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Predict Spring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. Predict Spring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair. Let's shift to sustainability. As you mentioned, that's probably at the heart of your mission. I mean, all one has to do is go onto your website and look at all the information dedicated to sustainability, from letting not only your customers know where you're making product, but actually your competitors know which factories that you are using and that you have approved and that are doing things to a standard that meets what you want as a sustainable brand. Tell us a little bit more about this commitment to sustainability, because a lot of people talk about it, but it feels more like greenwashing than anything else versus actually doing something about it and putting numbers out there that really speak to it.
Reformation's mission is to bring sustainable fashion to everyone. And so it's been that since day one. It's at the core of what we do. And I think that's what's so unique about the business is we did this since before it was buzzy and cool. And what that enabled is our supply chain, our business practices, all were built with a mindset around sustainability, which makes it a lot easier to do it at scale versus some of the large corporations out there who really are trying. They put in their best efforts, but it's much more challenging to retrofit a supply chain than to build it this way from the ground up. And so the way we really think about defining sustainability is pretty holistic. We think about everything from, our labor. We have our Sustainable Partners Guide, which is really all about the manufacturing. We have our materials, our fiber kind of standards, our business practices, everything from transportation to energy usage. And then underscoring it all, it's all about the reporting and the transparency of our footprint from a carbon, from a waste, from a water usage. So we try to be very, very transparent about everything we do, both what's well and when we fall short at times as well.
From a fabric point of view, are the fabrics completely sustainable, or are they mixed with some fabrics that are not sustainable?
So the way we think about it is we look at all the fibers out there and we bucket them into kind of A, B, C, D. And we really try to make sure the majority of our product comes from only A's and B's. But there are things at times where we use it and we are constantly working to minimize our usage of it. So I'll give you an example. Cashmere is on our C list, which is not ideal. We really want to get that reduced. We've been using a 90% recycled cashmere, which is an A fiber, and 10% conventional, which is at C. As our sweater business has grown, that's become a bigger problem for us because it has a really high carbon output. And so what we're doing this year is actually shifting our fiber to be 95% recycled, 5% conventional. And ultimately, we'll look to replace that 5% with some other fiber that is better rated in terms of its impact. So it's not to say we never do something, but we really try to minimize it and focus our production as much as possible on those higher impact or lower impact, better materials.
And you're making product in the US. You actually have your own factory in Los Angeles?
Yep.
What product are you making there?
We make mostly dresses there, but some tops as well. It's a wovens factory predominantly. We can do some knits, but that's not the majority of it. We tend to be making higher complex or high trend products where we want to test it in small runs. So we use it really strategically where, manufacturing partners don't necessarily want to take some of those orders or rush something. But for us, for example, J-Lo wears something, it kind of takes off. We can pull everything off the machines, make more of that within a week and get it back online. And so it's really a strategic tool for us.
Do you have a big sourcing team in the field looking at factories, maintaining quality standards? How do you manage the process?
So we have really great partners who we rely on in the field across the globe. We manufacture all in Europe, Asia, and North America. So we rely on partners for in-field monitoring, but then we obviously are traveling all the time to maintain those relationships with them. We also invest a lot more heavily into our partners, especially from a sustainability standpoint. So we know them a lot better. They know us a lot better. And so that really does enable us to move faster and help them kind of continue to make progress in terms of sustainability all the time.
And you feel, I assume, that with your commitment to product and advancing style and being trend right, that you can share which factories you use with others so that others can improve the way we live as well. Is that the thought behind it?
Yep, exactly right. I think it's important. We've been public about our factory list for several years now. And frankly, if you look at all of our sustainability work and commitments, we kind of lay it all out there. We lay out our roadmaps. We tell you how we're going to get there, who we're working with. Because someone on our team recently said this, and I really liked it, but sustainability is a team sport. No one company is going to get it right themselves. And we all kind of need to hold hands and help each other to make faster progress here. Regardless of however you think about the world, fashion is not great for the climate. Right? Like there is a lot of negative impact from apparel manufacturing and fashion manufacturing more broadly. And so we want to be one of the leaders in helping to find solutions, but we'll never do it alone. And so we work constantly with other brands, smaller and larger, with NGOs, with factories, with even large chemical conglomerates recently are some of our best partners in kind of material innovation. And so I think we think about this really holistically in terms of sharing what we know, but also asking for help when appropriate.
I also saw that you have an interesting partnership with ThreadUp. Tell us a little bit more about how that works. And does that go towards addressing your goal of being completely circular?
Yep. So we have a circularity commitment that 100% of our products will be recyclable, and we will use as little as possible of virgin materials by 2030. And really the idea behind this is, how do we get more life out of our products, whether it be the garment itself or the fiber? And so specifically when you think of end of life, there's a lot of things we can do. We can, one, make the product last longer, great quality. We can make sure that the garment care is lower impact as well. We can then support and encourage resale, which we do through our ThreadUp partnership. And then we also can allow for recycling, which we're now doing with about 40% of our products by the end of the year will be recyclable. So these are all ways in which we can kind of facilitate a broader circular economy in the apparel space, which we believe is kind of the ultimate goal for where we're all headed.
One other comment I wanted to make, I thought it was interesting, your program with ThreadUp. You offer customers a credit back to Reformation when they return something to ThreadUp, which in my mind I compare to sending something to the Real, where you just get money back and can spend it anywhere. So I like how you've kind of closed the loop, so to speak, on this circular business where the customer can return something to ThreadUp and get a credit back to Reformation.
Yep.
Is that driving a fair amount of business for you?
It is a smaller portion of the business, but it's really good for customer acquisition. We actually find a surprisingly large percent of our customers come to us through a resale platform for the first time. So whether it be Poshmark, RealReal, or Reformation, or ThreadUp, we are getting a lot of new customers through those channels. I think ThreadUp recently just published their brands report from last year, and Ref was number 4 rated, and that's after like Lululemon. So we have a lot of customers who are finding us there, falling in love with the brand and coming back to us, which is a great way for us to get new customers in all parts of the globe.
My daughter told me that you also, I guess in select stores, have a vintage or a rep section where you have special product that's not necessarily yours, but that your team has found, curated, and put in select stores. Tell me about that program.
So vintage is actually one of the core pieces of heritage of the brand. So when the brand was first started, it started as a vintage store where great vintage pieces were just being reworked and sold in the Lower East Side store. So it very much is kind of where we came from. And so we never want to lose that heritage. We have a dedicated vintage store in Los Angeles on Melrose. And then we sell vintage pieces in about 9 of our other stores as well. And so really that kind of does 2 things. One, it's who we are, where we came from. So it reminds you of the brand heritage. And then the second piece is it's probably one of the most sustainable ways to shop, right? To continue this circular economy. So it's very much supporting our broader mission.
I think it also really speaks to that Gen Z customer that's out there as well that loves to do some vintage shopping as well as find, pieces from the brand they love. Let's talk about marketing and new customers. Where would you say you're spending the majority of your marketing dollars, or how would you break down your marketing spend?
So unlike a lot of the other DTC brands out there, we actually were pretty late to the game on paid marketing and digital marketing. We didn't really start digital marketing until 2018 in a big way. And so what that means is today about 75% of our revenue is coming from unpaid sources. So first and foremost, we were always focused on building a great brand where that word of mouth kind of flywheel, as you would say, drove a lot of the action. It got customers coming to our site, to our stores. We've been able to amplify that a lot more through paid marketing and through more kind of big brand campaigns in the last couple of years, which was not initially part of the strategy. And so today, if you think about our spend, it's about half in brand, half in paid, but really all comes from this brand concept of how do you cut through? It's so noisy out there. How do you take the brand DNA and what makes it super special and make it really land with a broader new set of customers? And we do this through great imagery. We do this through like really buzzy collabs, whether it be key people or with other brands out there.
Speaking of key collabs, key people, buzzy campaigns. You picked Monica Lewinsky as a spokesperson or as an influencer, if you will, to really show what you were doing in this year. I think this goes back to February,
Yeah.
perhaps. Share with us a little bit more about what was the thought there? Like, who was not available that you decided to go with Monica Lewinsky? Because at first you would say, like, really? But the reaction has been extremely positive.
So Monica was one of my favorite moments we've had as a brand. She's incredible to work with. And yes, the reception has been absolutely positive across the board. The thinking here really was Monica is a strong woman. If you listen to her TED Talk, she's incredible and she's really fighting for great causes. And so we decided we wanted to do a voter engagement campaign and we wanted to partner with someone who was brave and who was really stood for something. And Monica does exactly that. She really represents the brand well in terms of the ability for that strong female voice and not being scared to say what you're thinking and being kind of owning your own power. And so this was a really exciting campaign. I think what was really fun about it was Gen Z discovered us, just like your daughter. She discovered Monica's story, and there were so many TikToks about Monica at that point. It was amazing. But then on the other hand, you also had kind of older customers who knew the Monica story, kind of remember what was going on. And also this time, I think we all were a bit more supportive than we were kind of 2 decades ago. And so you had all of this affection and support going for Monica and the campaign as well. And it was really it was a fun moment for a rep.
I think you and I have that in common. I think when I was at Gap, she wore a Gap dress and now she's wearing one of your dresses and she looked great in the ad. So that was a great coup for you. When you talk about marketing spend, the importance certainly to your customer around Instagram and TikTok, does that get a lot of your time and attention, or are you steering it into other areas of marketing?
When we think about marketing, for us, it's all about building great content, and that's imagery, that's voice, that's video, whether it be through the customers or ourselves. And then we deploy it across all of our channels. So I'd say we spend more of our time on that content creation piece, making sure we get that right. And then the other part kind of works itself out a bit more. We do have an incredible team who's super sophisticated at the algorithms and all of these tools to make sure people actually see this content. But I think it's a balance of you got to get both right.
Are you looking at connected TV or retail media networks to get the brand out there? Both seem to be a bit buzzy and kind of top of mind.
We have not done any of that yet. We just did a little bit of direct mail and we're doing our first major out of home right now in London. So we're pretty early on in terms of kind of the marketing toolkit, which kind of goes back to that point on brand awareness. We still have a lot of room to make sure more people know about us and get familiar with our values.
Well, listen, you've had some great growth doing what you've been doing. So everything that you haven't done would just present itself as pure opportunity, which that alone should be exciting. Another question I wanted to ask you was along the lines of mentors that you've had. I mean, you've been here at Reformation now for 10 years. Who would you credit your leadership style to, or how did you build your leadership style?
So I've been really fortunate in that I've had exposure to a lot of incredible leaders along the way. I read a ton. I'm constantly listening to podcasts just like this to hear from some of the experts you bring on, Ken. For me, my style tends to be I take lessons from across the board from different people. So I'll give an example. Bridget Klein, who is on our board, she was at Tory, she's now at Kate. She's incredible and definitely a mentor of mine. She really taught me about saying no more than yes and protecting. And when I say that, it's about protecting the brand. There's going to be lots of opportunities, lots of ways to grow, but you really want to pick the right one and be very precious about every decision you make and every way you kind of introduce the brand into new avenues, new audiences. I can go back to even just like a podcast recently I was listening to about Walmart, and the founder, Sam Walton, had one of the most interesting comments because he was obsessed with shopping the competition, with just constantly going around. But what he always asked himself and asked his team to do is say, not what's the competition not doing well. I think we all have such a tendency to walk into our competition and say, oh, they didn't do that well. But rather, what are they doing right? Like, what's great about our competition? And that's what we should be focusing on. And so that's really something I learned, kind of a change we've made at Ref, constantly trying to think about it in that way. And so I can go on and on about different examples of little tidbits I've picked up along the way that have definitely shaped who I am and how I think about running Reformation.
It's interesting. You mentioned Sam Walton, that not only did he say, what were they doing well, but then it was, how fast can we copy it? He made no bones. I mean, Walmart was after Kmart, and that was the way he operated. If they're doing something well, let's take it and do it better, which I think in retail today, when you look at, for the most part, what's happening, fashion, design, I mean, we're all influenced by so many different things. You find what you love, you make it better, you make it feel like it's part of your brand.
Yep.
And that's what we do. It's hard to, no one's going to add a third leg to a pant, and no one's going to add a third sleeve to a shirt, but you're going to find dresses and jeans and product out there that really speaks to you, whether it's a detail, it's a fit, it's a color that can be really important to the brand, done a brand's way. So I appreciate the Sam Walton approach and comment. It's certainly relevant in my lifetime and has been while I was working in retail for a number of years. If you were to think back on your career, were there any decisions that you made that you would like to redo, or any choices that you made that were not the right choice that stand out in your mind?
I think the biggest thing I've learned along the way is really to ask more questions and to be as curious as possible. And so especially in Ref, where we were learning so much along the way, like we had to do, whether or not it was, how do you ship more boxes out of the distribution center? We had to figure that out, versus manufacturing out of the US for the first time, versus paid marketing, right? Like, these are all new things for us every time. And I think there were times where we were too slow to bring in experts and to ask people who knew more than us to come in and kind of show us the way. We always wanted to pave our own path. We always wanted to we got this. And I think there's a time and there's a place for that. One of our values is be brave, but there's also a time and a place just to ask questions, just to learn from people who know what they're doing and have done it already. And so that's something I probably would have been earlier on in my career, a bit more forward about bringing into experts, especially in the areas where we were struggling. We kind of took us too long to get up to speed in a couple of our key areas.
Hali, as you're growing the company, you must have a number of opportunities or key positions you're looking to fill. What's top of mind, top of list right now at Ref?
We are always looking for great talent. So, if you are listening and looking, please check out the job board. I'd say right now, some of the key roles that are top of mind for us, we have some really big, important roles in merchandising, in our biggest categories. Always looking for more designer talent as well, for those of you out there with a design background. And then operations and supply chain, definitely looking to fill out those teams as well as we continue to scale. So please go to the job boards. We'd love to hear from more of you.
And is this mostly on-site in LA, or are some of these positions hybrid?
Most of them are on-site in one of our buildings in Los Angeles. We also have some New York openings and are opening a New York office as well. So typically it's one of those geos, sometimes in London as well, if you're in London.
Sounds exciting. Let's go into rapid fire. Are you ready?
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Designer you admire most?
Oh, designer I admire most. Maybe Donna Karan. Early on, I think she really set a full new way for women to think about themselves, about how to dress, how to be sexy, but still professional. I think she defined a new era. She's really incredible.
Favorite streamed show?
So many of them. Succession, I absolutely loved. Definitely recently The Bear. Maybe a little embarrassing, but I'll say Bridgerton right now. It's kind of fun.
My wife loves Bridgerton, but she loved The Bear and Succession.
Oh, there we go.
All three.
We get along.
You guys have that going. If Reformation could collaborate with anyone or any brand, who would it be?
So we actually tried to do a collab with Gustavo Dudamel from the LA Philharmonic. Fortunately, he turned us down, but we think that would be so cool. But if not Dudamel, I think like the Cybertruck, Tesla Cybertruck and Ref, I think we can do something real fun in here. So Elon, if you're listening, give us a call.
With that, we'll land this flight of the retail pilot. Hali, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and it was great to see you.
You too, and thanks for making the time. It was a really fun conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the retail pilot, and please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.